This is an instructional video put together by Lighting Colorado's Christmas to show you how to be safe, professional, and efficient when it comes to installing Christmas lights. When it comes to tools for cutting and making connections, you basically just need something that can crimp down and something that can cut. So you could use something small that's able to cut wire like this, something that can crimp down like this, and some tools are all-in-ones where they actually do have a place where you can cut stuff and it helps crimp down. Personally, I like to have scissors or a wire cutter just because I find that's the easiest way to cut wires, especially at an angle. And then I really like the vice grip because I can match it to be exactly the length of the finished crimp, and then so I can grab something, crimp it down, and I know it's good, and I find that to be easiest. I'm going to go over the 4 different kind of connections to a wire. At Lighting Colorado's Christmas, we only use SPT2 wire, which is 10 amp. On all wire, you'll notice one side has a corrugated edge with ridges, and the other side of the wire is smooth. The first kind of connection is a male connection, and you'll notice that there's 2 different sizes. There is a big one and a small one. The big one is the one where the corrugated part of the wire connects to. So you'll look at your male connection, you'll see the big ones on top. We'll flip this over, and the tooth for the big one, you can see that is on the right hand side, and the other tooth is on the left hand side. So you're going to take the corrugated edge and you're going to put it on the right hand side. So there's an opening on this side and it's closed on this side. On the closed side, there is actually a slot in there, and you put your wire into the slot with the correct side where the corrugated edge is going to be going into the male. Now, when it's cold outside, it can be hard to get it into the slot. And when we go over troubleshooting, something that's common is you put your wire in and then you push it over these, and instead of the tooth actually piercing the wire, it bends the tooth over. So one quick thing you can do to prevent that is to take whatever tool you're using and take your wire and just kind of pre-bend it to help out with that a little bit so it doesn't have that issue. Put your wire in, and then you're going to lay it flat on those teeth. Now with your fingers, I like to push it in a little bit. Remember to push down straight into it. Don't push sideways and bend those teeth. It'll help you save time and not have to troubleshoot. This is the cap. It's the same cap that goes on both the male and the female connectors. And it has a closed end and an open end. You're going to take the opened end and you slide it on there, and see how it slides in. And then if you can with your hands, you can close it. Now in the cold, things become very stiff and hard to work with, so a lot of times you can't close it with your hands. If it's sunny and warm out, you can close it with your hands, and you want to grab the top and the bottom. You want to make sure the wire doesn't get in the way and you don't pinch the wire, but you can grab the top and the bottom. I like to do it from about like that, and then when you squeeze, it locks it into place. Now, like I said, a lot of times you can do this with your hand, but I wanted to show you how to do it with the vice grip because when it is cold, it's very hard to close them, and that's how you put on a male connection. So males is always how you start a cord. If you had 2 males on this cord and you plug this in with the other end, these would be live wires, and if you touch it and complete the circuit, it'll electrocute you. That's why you always end with a female, so if you touch it, nothing connects the circuit and it doesn't electrocute you. So you always start with the male, and every single male you label. So we'll go over labeling later, but just remember, always start with the male, always label a male, and you can end the wire with either a dead end or a female connection. So I'm going to show you the female connection is pretty much the same as the male. You're going to notice that there is a bigger opening and a smaller opening. If we have the big one on the bottom, you flip it over, you notice the tooth is on the right hand side. So then you take your wire, you can just feel, you don't have to actually look at it. One's corrugated, one's smooth. Put the corrugated on the right hand side because that's the bigger one. And same thing, you enter it in where it's closed up here at the top. Push it in just a little bit, and then you're gonna put it on top right there. Push it in with your hands. When it's cold, like I said, you can pre-bend it to try to avoid it from pulling those teeth over. Then you're gonna take your cap, which is the same for both the male and the female, and place it over, and then take a tool that's pre-measured to the right size, grab, and now your female's ready. Another kind of connection is the dead end. You put the female on when you need to continue the line, when you need to add another male to this and continue having electricity go. If this is the very end and you don't need to continue, you can do a dead end. So it's really important when you do a dead end, it's best if you can actually cut it at an angle. So 45-degree angle works well. The reason cutting it at an angle rather than flat is when you cut it flat, if any moisture gets in, the distance between the two actual pieces of wire is shorter and it can complete the circuit. So we're just trying to be safe and avoid problems. But when you cut it at an angle, the distance between the two is a little bit farther and it helps from completing the circuit. So I like to cut it at an angle. You can cut it flat, it'll still work. I just try to prevent as much as possible that circuit of being completed. So what's nice about electrical tape is it's a tension tape. So you take a little bit, and if you actually pull, it'll break. But obviously you can use a cutter or scissors to help it make it easier. Now what I like to do is I like to take a small piece of tape and lay it flat on that edge. So you can see that edge, I put it there, put it flat, and then I just bend it over. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to prevent any water from being able to touch both of those wires at the same time and complete the circuit. And then once I have a piece over the dead end, I take my other piece, I take my electrical tape, and I'm just going to go around and make sure that I try to seal up the edges so that no water is actually going to be able to touch those. Go around at least once, and then once you got it around, you can kind of pull it, and it'll help create tension on there and keep it from coming loose. And that's a dead end. So the final type of connection, when you need to pull electricity off of the middle of the wire, it's common for wreaths and other things, but it's very similar, but there's one key difference is you take your female, and you'll notice your female has these slots on the end where the male plug does not. And the reason for that is so that you can break it off. So you take a tool, come in there, and it breaks off. Pretty easy, breaks off. And that way you can lay a wire right down the middle. So again, you look, okay, we got the big side on top this time, the bigger opening, flip it over, that's going to be on the left hand side. So I'm going to take my corrugated wire, put that on the left, and you're just going to lay that in, and you're going to take your cap and slide it on. Use your whatever tool you're going to use. And now you have a female in the middle of the wire so that you can plug a male right into it and continue on from the middle. While making your connections, you need to follow these 3 safety rules. Rule number 1 is never end a wire with a male connection. You can only end wires with a female connection or a dead end. The second rule is never cut or make connections while the wire is plugged in or while it is live. The third rule is never overload a cord. Most commonly at Lighting Colorado's Christmas, we're working with SPT2 wire and using LED C9 bulbs. So you just need to know, don't ever put more than 480 bulbs on one wire. If you are ever working with something else, just use this chart. So if you're using incandescent C9s with SPT2 wire, don't exceed 170 bulbs per male connection. Here are the steps to installing Christmas lights on the fascia or roof line of a home. So if it's a new install and there isn't already labels on both the Christmas lights themselves and a picture marking where they go, you're going to need to create that. And it's actually pretty simple. You're going to, on the picture, mark where every male connection is on your setup, as well as on your actual cord or line. Wherever there is a male connection, you're with a piece of tape or a tag, you're going to make a little marker so that you can use the picture to identify where everything goes. So first I'm going to show you how to put the marker on the Christmas line itself, then I'll show you how to put it on the picture. A quick tip to get ready is all of your male and females, you can actually take the cap and put it on there and then squeeze just a little bit so that they're all connected, and that'll save you some time when you're actually out there getting ready to install. They're already got everything you need. And then take it a step further, we like to label with these tags and these little hooks. So you just put the keychain on the hook, and then what I like to do when I'm getting things ready for the next day is I take a hook and I connect them to all the males. Doesn't matter which tooth you connect it to, but that way it's ready to go, and you know when you start putting this on that you need to label it. And if you're not sure what you're going to label it, I usually just leave it on the tooth until I actually do label it, and then I'll move it to the wire. So if all you're installing is one thing, like just fascia on a home, I just use the number system and just start, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just make sure you don't have multiple 3s or multiple 1s, just only 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. And then also on the picture of your house, you're going to label where each number is. Now, if you're doing 2 things or 3 things, like let's say you're doing the fascia of a home and you're doing trees, I'll put F1, F2, F3 for all the fascia connections, and then for all the tree connections, I'll put T1, T2, T3. And then if you're doing something like garland, G1. And if you're doing something like wreaths, W1, W2, that sort of thing. So let's say you're not going to use these tags for whatever reason, or you run out of these tags and you don't have anything. Just grab some duct tape and create a little tag at the end of the wire. I'll show you a quick tip with this too. Put it in the middle the best you can. Take the tape and you're gonna fold it over, and you want to make sure you try your best to get the edges to line up. It isn't the easiest thing, but do your best to get it so that way it's not sticky. And then you might have a sticky end like that. One thing you can do is you can just fold it over onto that to make sure there's no sticky ends, or you can just cut the excess off to try to prevent as much stickiness from the duct tape as possible, just to keep things clean. And then on this tag is where you'll actually label, this is going to be 1F. But again, I like the tags the most, they work the best. And then if you don't have it, if you're just doing one thing, you can just label it 1 and you're ready to go, and you can find your picture, all the numbers, line it up. So the second time you install something should only take about 1/4 the amount of time that it takes to install it the first time, as long as you label everything while you're installing. We know from experience that this will save you tons of time in the future. And worst case scenario, if there are no labels, before you take it down, make sure as you're taking it down, you label stuff. So your production manager is going to take a picture of a home, and sometimes it'll be multiple pictures to get the whole display in there, and he's going to mark up the picture to show you where everything is going. So here's an example where in the red he's showing the extension cords and how you're going to get power to everything, and the yellow is where all the lights are, and all of these markings, the green, are where all of your males are going to be. Here's another example of a home and what it might look like that he's going to pre-lay out for you to save you time and show you how to do it in an efficient way. If you have the rare case where the production manager hasn't already created the layout for you, you're going to need to actually put in where all the male connections are. And most cases, there's going to be a picture of the house that's going to show you where we're putting the lights. In this case, it's all the front facing fascia, and you don't actually have to draw in any extension cords that's going to connect these different things. You just need to put in where the male markers are. So with your Sharpie pen or marker, you're going to write 1 next to the power source because that's the first male connection. I'm going to go over in a minute how to run your power cord and what's the best way, but here's where number 2 would be. You just put that on there. Now, there might be the super rare case where if you just have a blank picture and it isn't actually marked where we're putting it, but you know it's going in the front facing fascia, you don't actually have to draw in those green lines. And you don't have to draw in any power cords. All you need to do is just put the numbers on the picture. That's all that you have to do. The only time this would happen is if we got super busy and the production manager didn't have enough time to make the layout for you beforehand, which 95% of the time they're going to have that for you. So this is an extremely rare case, but if that's the case and all you have is a picture, you don't have to draw anything in. Just mark the numbers, and a lot of times it'll already be marked and you just again put the numbers on the picture. But like I said, 95% of the time it's going to look like this. There's a couple rules to follow when it comes to connecting power to your light strand. So they're in this order for a reason. The first thing is, if it's possible, never cross concrete, a driveway or a walkway. There's 2 main reasons for this. One is it doesn't look professional. 2 is it's a safety issue, so it creates a trip hazard, and it's a point where something's likely to break. You know, if it snows on this driveway, they're likely going to shovel it, and while they're shoveling it, they're going to hit your cord and they're going to break it. So if it's possible, always avoid crossing. So you see the power to this tree is coming off here, and it's going down this downspout. You wouldn't want to take power from here and drag it over the driveway. So most likely the picture will be made for you, but if you need to improvise because something is wrong with the picture or create your own, follow that rule first. The second rule is always start on a corner. So on a 1-story house like this one, there's a corner here and a corner here, so you have 2 corners. You know, a 2-story house like this, you might actually have 4 corners. This one, there's one here, there's also one here. So that would be 4 options on that house. You wouldn't want to bring it over to these corners because you'd have to cross the driveway, so you'd come here first. Now, the third rule is always tuck it behind a downspout when possible. So you'll see in this picture, there's actually a downspout on the 1st story, this guy right here, but there's not a downspout on the 2nd story. So this is the corner you want to start on by following those rules. Rules number 1, stay off driveways. Rules number 2, start on a corner, which gives you 2 options. And then the final rule is tuck it behind a downspout when possible. So that isn't possible up here. So this is your only option for starting on this particular house. When you're bringing the wire from the ground up to the roof, you want to make sure that you never wrap it around the downspout or tie it to the downspout. The reason is when we go to remove it, we want to just be able to pull on the cord and everything comes off. A lot of times you don't even need a ladder to remove 2nd-story Christmas lights. Now, if that downspout is too far away or too close to the wall and you can't wedge it behind there or won't stay behind there because it's not close enough, you can put it on a clip like I'm showing here, and then you can use the clip to finagle with the downspout and get it wedged behind there so that it's hidden and looks really professional. For this example, you can see there is a downspout that comes down this side, and this is your only option. So this is where you're going to bring power from the ground up to the roof. Obviously, if there's outlets in the eaves, you're going to start there, but most homes you're going to need to bring the power from the ground up to the roof. Okay, so there's multiple different ways you may see a layout. So in this layout, because we are doing 2 things, we're doing fascia and trees, we have a separation of F and T. F standing for fascia, T standing for trees. Even if you didn't know what the F and T stand for, just follow the picture and you'll be able to see the diagram. The other way that this house may be displayed is like this, where it's the exact same thing, but instead of separating it, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, versus separating it into 2 different categories. So on this house, if you have multiple people helping you install, you would separate it to where, you know, person A can start working on, you know, 1F, 2F, 3F. person B can start working on 1T, 2T, and so on, and separate it so you can divide and conquer and be as efficient as possible. Quick note with trees: if it's a Christmas tree wrap, meaning you're going around in a circular motion, it'll be displayed like this. And if it's a branch and tree wrap, it's going to be displayed like this, meaning that you're going to individually wrap the branches and the trees. When it's a Christmas tree wrap, you'll most commonly have a huge ball of mini lights, and it'll just have one male sticking out at the end labeled, and you'll notice that that big ball has a lot of males and females connected, but they're all taped together. When they're taped together, that means it's to be used as one long strand, and you will have that. When it's a branch and tree wrap, that's the only time you'll have multiple males labeled the same thing. So in this case, it's 2T. So you'll have a bunch of little balls of mini lights individually rolled into a ball, all for this tree. The reason for that is it's much easier to wrap a small ball of lights around a single branch so that you can get it in between spaces with a small ball and breaking it up into a bunch of little ones, versus if it's a big Christmas tree wrap, it's easier to just have one ball and unwind the whole thing onto the tree at once. So be aware of that. The only time you'll see multiple males labeled the same is when you're wrapping a tree with the trunk and branch wrap. Okay, so whether the picture is displayed like this or like this, it's the exact same thing and you're going to follow the same steps. So we're going to go ahead and use this example, but just be aware that a lot of times it'll just be like this and you'll see it's the exact same. So if this house has been previously installed, you're going to pull out of the box all of the extension cords, which will be wrapped up the way we wrap extension cords, like this, and all of the lights will be wrapped up into balls like this. So you're going to separate them all, look at the tags, and then divide and conquer and start putting it on the house based on the labels. And you can skip number 2, 3, and 4 on how to install the Christmas lights. If the house has not been previously produced, you're going to have to create everything from scratch, and you're going to need to follow step number 2, which is measuring the line and making the cuts. So there's some really important rules to follow on that. The first rule is when it comes to the C9 fascia, we're most commonly at Lighting Colors Christmas going to use SPT2 with LED lights, which is 480 is the max, and that is a lot of light. So it's very rare where you ever have to create 2 different strands, but be aware of it. If you are going to have more than 480 LED bulbs, C9 bulbs on one strand, you're going to need to break it up into 2 separate strands. The only time that should come into play is on a very large house where we're doing the fascia on all 4 sides. But for 90-95% of installs, you don't have to worry about it, but just be aware of that. And if in the rare case that you are working with different materials such as incandescent lights, follow this chart where it says the max is 170, and basically if what's nice is every single bulb is a foot apart. So if you have more than 170 consecutive feet, you're going to want to make 2 lines going into a power source. Okay, so you want to measure everything from the ground. You always want to have extra that you're going to cut off. It's always better to have too much than not enough. So for instance, let's say you're going to run 1 consecutive strand from here all the way over to here. It's better to have a little bit extra, so when you actually are done installing, you're going to make the cut there so it's the exact length that it needs to be. The biggest reason for that is that's what looks most professional. Now let's say we're human and we make a mistake and we don't judge it correctly and we end, say, right here. In that case, you're just going to create a female, connect a male, and then continue the lights on to finish it out. But when you make that male and female connection, that's the only time you don't have to label the male. But in that case, you're going to wrap that connection with the electrical tape as shown here. And when you see a connection like that wrapped in electrical tape, you know that means that it's supposed to just be one long line connection, and you don't have to worry about that male being made, and that's all to be treated as one piece and never separated. So I'm using this house as an example because it's an easy one to demonstrate how you're going to measure everything from the ground and leave a little bit of excess. Alright, so let's just start at the beginning. First, you're going to need an extension cord that comes down, comes to here. You're going to have to put a female in the middle as shown here, and then bring it all the way up to the roof. So you're just going to start laying out extension cord on the ground, bring it over to here, and then you're going to figure, this is about 10 feet up in the air. You're going to come over a little bit. So I would just make an extra 15 foot here. So lay out the extension cord, give yourself a little bit of extra, and then cut the extension cord. Then you're going to make the male, and you always want to label all the males on the picture on the ground. It's much easier to do it on the ground. So you're going to label this male 1F, and it's going to go off to the end of the line, and you'll leave that on the ground. You're going to, when you finally bring it up to the roof, that's where you're going to cut and put on the female so it's the exact length. And then we've got this next piece of lighting, which is C9 sockets, that goes from this corner to right here. So just on the ground in the grass, you're going to have your huge spool of C9 wire. So you're just going to start walking the spool and just unravel it, in relatively straight line to about there. Go a little bit further to give yourself some excess. What's nice with straight lines, like the roof line here, is, it's pretty easy to measure. You'll come to there, and then you'll make a cut, and then you're going to label the male on the ground, and you'll leave the female off, and you won't make the cut up here until you get up there so it can be the exact length or measurement. You know that 3F, so it's hard to see in this picture, but the reason that there's another connection here and it just doesn't come all the way through is because the fascia actually doesn't touch. So you can see it over here on this side. The fascia actually has a gap. It ends there, and then it's going to run down the roof line and then start on the fascia here. As you can see, this red is supposed to represent the extension cord. So it's a mirror image over on this side. So you'd have a small extension cord, connect a male on one side, leave the other side blank. And then for this side now, for the example, let's get rid of these. So now in the grass on the front yard, you can just draw this image on the ground. What I like on the grass is you can actually just line it up with the house, come over, and then back up. So that this corner starts right here, this corner starts right here, and then you have that length. And then remember to leave this little bit of extra just to make sure you have enough up there, and always have a little bit over, and you're going to cut that. So at the end of a new install, you should have a bunch of wasted wire that is cut a little bit. It may seem like a waste, but it's going to make every install in the future quicker, better, and more efficient, as well as look a lot more professional. You always want to have more rather than not enough. And the reason we do it on the ground is it's safest to do it on the ground, and because it's much easier to put on the lights on the ground. Okay, so now I'm using this house as an example to show you what to do when you get to a house and you realize the production manager overlooked something and made a mistake. So if we actually look, you might notice the mistake is this comes over here and it doesn't connect there. So you actually need an extension cord to connect these two, and that was left out of the diagram, which does happen because sometimes it's just overlooked and hard to see. When you see that, you're going to have to create stuff that's not on the actual picture. Now, rather than changing the entire diagram, just take your Sharpie and your marker, and for the extras, I like to label them, E. So I just start over 1. There's an extra there because there's going to be a male here for the extension cord, and then the extension cord is going to run to here, and that's where you'll end it. And then a new male is going to start here, and you're going to label that 2E. So I use this as an example to show you when that happens. Hopefully it doesn't, but it will happen. Rather than changing the whole diagram, just add in 2 extra tags, 1E and 2E. So then the next time we go to do this, it's easy to see and we'll be able to redo it. So on the ground, this short little piece here, so just walk it out, make it a little bit longer, and then you'll make your cut up on the roof. And then the final one, you could even start in the bushes over here, roll it out, and then roll it across, and then roll it back. So, and then sometimes if there isn't room there, you're just going to start down here, walk it out about the same amount of distance. If you're unsure how far that is, what I do is I pace in here. I start walking here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going to start on this corner, and you've got your 5 steps in here. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're going to walk it out over here and just go right to this corner. And then you're going to come back up and then go over. And then instead of stopping here, give it a little bit of extra stop like that, knowing that we're going to cut this, but we just want to make sure that we have extra, because what you'll notice is sometimes there is slack on the line and it actually takes a little bit more than you think. And then I'll show you also in this example, there's going to be situations where you always want a light at the top. So sometimes, you know, there'd be a light here and there'd be a light here, but you're going to shift things over so that there's a light at the top, and then space these out as best you can, which I'll demonstrate later in the video when we go over how to actually install the clips. So my point is, it often takes, like, even though this is, call it 20 foot, it might actually take 23 foot of line due to slack in the line and making the lights attach where you want them to. So when you have a peak like this, it's like, well, how am I supposed to draw that out? It's the same thing when you're on the ground in the grass. Just try to match the angle of the roof, walk it over to where you're in line with that one, and then walk it back to where you're in line with that edge. And then that's another reason why you always leave some extra, because you know, you might not have this angle perfect, and again, there's going to be slack in the line, so leave a little bit of extra knowing you're going to cut that off, and then you'll put the male at the beginning of your line. Alright, so when you've gone through and you've created all the F lines, it's really important that on the ground, go ahead and first thing right after you're done, put the male on the beginning of the line, and then also label it. That way later on, after you've labeled all these, if you're, wait, which one went where? I can't remember which cut I made because you put them in a pile or something like that. It's very common. They're labeled so you know, hey, that one's supposed to go here, that one's supposed to go there, and so forth. It'll be huge. Just make sure you label it while it's on the ground. Okay, so the next step is you're going to install the actual light bulbs on the ground. It's much easier to install them on the ground rather than up on the roof. So you're going to just start connecting, screwing in all your light bulbs as shown here. If it's going multicolor, you need to make sure that you put them in the same order. So red, green, blue, yellow, violet, red, green, blue, yellow, violet, red, green, and so on. Just make sure you put them in the same order. And that's number 4. So number 5 is really important. So you're going to have this strand, and all the lights are going to be connected to it. You're going to walk it over to the power source, and you're going to plug it in. When you do plug it in, remember, the end of the line doesn't have anything on it, so either tape it off or just make sure that this isn't sitting in water or snow, because that'll complete the circuit. So if it's on the ground like that, good, plug it in, but don't plug it in if for some reason somebody is holding it. That's a safety issue. You're just plugging it in real quick to make sure this connector works and all the lights come on, and you don't need to fix a bulb or fix the connector when you're up on the roof. That's what you're saving time on. But you need to make sure when you plug it in, always be aware of the end of the cord is in a safe place to plug it in real quick, test it, and then unplug it. Now let's say that none of the lights come on, the entire thing is off. After you've double checked that the outlet actually is getting power with, you know, something that is there that works, like some mini lights that you've tested before, maybe a cell phone charger, and you know you're absolutely getting power from the outlet. You know that this right here, the male connection, is what's not working. So there's a problem with it, and you're gonna have to open it up and fix that problem. So, you know, when you see this male connector, basically there's a cap that slides on, and the way you remove it is you actually, the part that actually slides, you have to get something that bites just that so you can pull it back, but doesn't actually hit this part of the male connector. So that can be a little bit tricky. And then, you know, so you have a clamp that pushes this back. On this side, it needs to grab here. So on this side, you're grabbing here, and on this side, you're grabbing that, and then some force is going to move that cap back. So the reason I bring that up is a quick tip. You know, like all these tools would work to do it, but the bigger the piece and the end that's actually grabbing the cap, the harder it is to do it. So actually, if you have like some pliers, my favorite is this tool right here, mainly because if you look, it has a really small surface area where it grabs, and that makes it easy for grabbing onto there. And I find that it's much easier than using my vice grips when I use this tool. So the way you're going to take that off is, yeah, you need to be able to get, you know, this tooth to only touch right there, and then the other tooth is going to touch on the actual thing, and then just apply a little pressure, and it tends to snap like that, comes right off. So you take off that cap, and then you're going to check, did these vampire teeth pierce the wire? Now sometimes it might look like it pierced it, But if you actually look really close there, I know it's hard to see, it didn't go all the way through. This one did go all the way through. And then if we look at that tooth, you can see it's actually bent over, which is kind of common. I'm gonna take this wire out. So you'll see that that tooth has bent over and it's not sticking straight up anymore. And that's why it didn't pierce it in. So when we put the wire in and bent it over, it actually pushed that tooth over rather than piercing into the wire. So there's two fixes for that. One sure fix is just replace the male, or you don't have a male nearby, and if you're trying to save money on materials, you can bend that tooth back. So I'm just gonna grab with my teeth, and I know it'll be hard to get it on camera, but I'm gonna grab that tooth and I'm gonna bend it back straight up. So now that it's, straight up and down again, it's hard to pick up on camera, and now it's ready to pierce the line. See, if you don't put it in here, it's less likely to happen because then you bend it over. So if you laid it flat on like that, it would be way less likely to happen. The reason you're supposed to put it in there is it provides a little bit of protection in case water gets into that. It's harder to complete the circuit. So like I said before, if that's an issue and one you've already bent back, pre-bend this so that you don't have to worry as much about it. So then it's bent at that 90-degree angle. So then when you put it in, it wants to lay flat on the tooth rather than bending it over that tooth and having that tooth bend over. Because the wire, you put it in and then when you bend it over, it can tend to bend that tooth over versus the tooth's up, but you already have the wire bent. When you put it in, the tooth goes right into it. So that's kind of the logic behind it. And if one of the light bulbs doesn't come on, you're going to troubleshoot using this method. If one of the bulbs isn't working, like these two, the first quickest fix is just make sure it's screwed in all the way. That's usually what it is. It's just not screwed in all the way. And sometimes when you screw them in, you might not notice it, but it's kind of at an angle and it isn't in there right. It gets cockeyed, so you have to like kind of back it out and then screw it back in correctly. And that's usually the easiest fix. And what's most common. Now, what might also happen is you screw it in all the way. So let's say you screw it in all the way and then it's not working. And if that's the case, replace the bulb with another one and make sure that it doesn't work. So if that bulb doesn't work and you know it's a working bulb because it works in another socket, and for some reason when you get the replacement bulb, you put it in there, screw it in all the way, and it's still not working, then something's wrong with the socket, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. So the first thing, when something's wrong with the socket, you need to unplug. So let's go ahead and unplug because you don't want to zap yourself. And we'll take a look at this socket and I'll show you what's most common. So if you actually look in this socket, you'll see that there's a little piece of metal there that's bent up. So that metal, sometimes it gets squashed down and it doesn't bend back up, but it's supposed to be kind of bent up a little bit. And basically the way that the socket works is there's a piece, this right here and that bottom piece. When those two things connect, it completes the circuit. So it touches this part of the bulb and this part of the bulb, and that black is what separates it, and that's what completes the circuit. So sometimes if that's bent down, you have to bend it back up so that it actually touches this part of the bulb, which happens, just over time, and it's pretty rare. I mean, this is one of the most rare things to happen, but it can happen. So you need to get something small, like maybe a screwdriver, the pointy end of some scissors, and you get down in there and you get underneath that, and then you bend it back up like I'm doing there. Sometimes a paper clip, or this is actually the tool they use to get a SIM card out of a phone. If you get it down in there, and then you can get some, and see, you can bend it like I am there, and you just want to make sure that that's actually bent up. So when you screw in your actual light bulb, this part of the bulb touches it. So that usually will fix it. Now let's say that you've made sure that the bulb works in a different socket, you bent that thing back up, you screw it in, it's still not working. This socket is bad, and you're gonna have to replace this socket. You're gonna go to your spool and you're gonna cut off, the line just so that you can get one socket. And I'm gonna show you how to remove the socket from the line so you can put it back on the line that you need the socket on. So obviously, if it's a really short line with like, I don't know, 3 or 4 sockets, just replace the whole line. But if it's a huge line of like 100 and it's right in the middle and you just need to replace that one socket, this is how you're going to remove it. You need something strong, you know, vice grips, or I like this tool for doing this. You're going to come and you're going to bite down where the line comes in and where the line goes out, and you're going to get close to the base. And I'm going to try to angle this so you can see. So this, on each side, you know, this piece right here that I'm touching, that is a little clip, and there's one on each side, and that's what holds the bottom of this socket. The bottom of the socket actually detaches. You can see how it's 2 different pieces, and that comes off, and it's held in by those 2 clips. So on these 10 amp SPT2 wires, the one that we use that are a lot bigger, this is super hard to get off. So do your best, squeeze, and you know, you're trying to just deform it enough so that those tabs in there will come loose. So get it a little bit and then grab here on these wires and pull back. And a lot of times it takes a lot of strength and you kind of have to squeeze it from multiple angles. You can also take your screwdriver, and when you see that this starts to open up, stick, you know, your screwdriver in there, your flathead, and then turn it to try to open it up more, like this side. And once you've, if you are able to get it off, great. It'll come off like that. Okay, so then you're gonna have your bad socket off the line, and you're gonna have your new good socket to replace it. So there's that corrugated edge. There's 2 vampire teeth, just like your male and female connectors. And the tooth that is connected to that side plate there, that is the side that goes on this corrugated edge that has the rough texture versus the smooth texture. Okay, and then we got that thing on the side, left hand side, and you can try to put it in the same hole that it was in. You can see it a lot easier than the male and females. Try to put in that same hole so it goes in easy, and then you push, make sure those teeth are in the wire, and then you're going to put your cap back on, and you push the cap on. You can try to do it with your hands, but a lot of times it's a lot harder to do than it looks. So then you can take, you know, some tool, and you're actually gonna, I usually have to do both sides. So I'm gonna push this side in, and then I'm gonna have to do the other side as well. And then you've replaced, make sure that side's on all the way. And then you replaced your socket. If you don't have the right tool or you can't get the socket off, another quick fix is just take your line and you're gonna cut in the middle, and then just replace that with connectors. That's another way to fix it if you're unable to remove and replace the socket. Okay, now we're ready to move on to step 6, which is going to be hang all the lights on the roof line with the clips, and this is how you do that. These are the all-in-one clips that we use, and you might actually see something like this out there, which this is when we run out of time and we can't order these because it takes a minute to ship. And this is something you could pick up at like a hardware store like Home Depot or Walmart. But these are the best all-in-one clips. The main reason that we love these clips is they're universal. They work for a lot of applications that I'll show you. But the biggest thing is the removal. When you go to take down the lights, these clips release easily. So in a lot of cases, you don't actually need to use a ladder. You can get the entire Christmas light display down from the ground extremely fast. So I'm going to show you how you put on these clips. You never put on a clip until you're actually up on the roof. You do everything else on the ground, but you put the clips up on the roof. And the reason for that, there's a couple different ways that they can go onto the light depending on where it's going, and transitions happen. It's hard to predict from the ground, so you do it up on the roof. So here's your C9 socket, and there's going to be situations where it's sitting on a gutter going this way, or it's sitting on a gutter going that way. So whenever you're putting it on this side of the clip where this piece isn't, it's pretty simple. You just push it in like that, and this is going to go into the gutter, which I'll show you here, and it's going to sit there like that. Okay, now let's say that it's going in the gutter this way, there's a little trick. You take the end piece here and you slide it under there, and then I kind of like push it up, and then when I bring it back, there's this other little tab right here my thumb is on, and that I pushed, hear that? See how it goes under it? And that helps keep it secure, so you'll feel it like, so then it's in your gutter as shown, and it'll be both ways. Now, let's say that you're actually installing it on the roof. It's the same thing. It'll be going this way, and this is going to slide up under the roof as shown here, or it'll be on the other side. You just push it on like that, and then this slides up underneath the roof, and then when you go to pull it and release, it comes off really easy. And I'll show you in the gutter here in a sec. When it's in the gutter, the reason we like these clips, when you pull, it comes right off of the gutter, and that's why this is shaped that way. It's for that easy release. If a house has been previously installed, you might see these on the extension cord already on there, and they're going to be used for different things, either attaching it to the gutter, hiding it behind the downspout, and a bunch of other applications. So let me open this extension cord a little bit. I'll show you how this goes. So you can actually put it in there, and then so it doesn't fall out, you'll notice it has this little notch there, and on the other side has a notch right there where my index finger is, and it's so you can take these, and it's a simple twist, and that locks it into place so that it can't fall out. That's why they're called an all-in-one clip. They use for that kind of stuff. You could even run another line through there for some certain applications where you have two lines going for whatever reason. It's rare, but it happens. There's two ways that lights can be attached to a gutter, and it really just depends. You don't have to remember this, but it depends on which direction they're going. So if the male is on your right hand side and the female is on the left hand side, then they're going to go in this way. And the difference is there is this little clip right here that's not actually attached to the clip, so they can pop in and out. Now the other way is if the male is on the left hand side and it's going, and the female is on the right hand side, they're going to be put in this way. And the difference is the actual clip, this part on the C9 is going to be connected with the all-in-one clip. Now it's very important that you put them on this way with a gutter. You want this little notch with the tooth on that part of the gutter, because when you go to remove these lights, you're going to pull from the ground, not even on a ladder, and it's going to come right off like that. So when you get going quickly, you might accidentally put on the clip the wrong way, and then you go to put it on the gutter and you're like, oh bummer, it's the wrong way. Now what you're tempted to do is just whatever, I'll just put it on and leave it. It still works, it's fine. Now I know that that might be tempting, but don't ever do that. The reason is, now when we go to remove this clip, it gets stuck. It's a lot harder to remove because of that tooth. So when you accidentally put it on the wrong way, just take the extra 2 seconds to take the clip off, flip it around, and put it on the right way. When you're coming around the corner, you might realize, well, hey, this doesn't fit here, so I need to put it here. And you might be tempted to put it there, but never do this. You don't do this. You always put it on the edge right here. Even if there's a lot of slack in the line, that's fine, but never bring it around and put it here. If you can reach it over to the roof, that's where you'd go. Now you notice you have to change the clip, but if you can bring it to the roof edge, you can go there, but never go here. Only go here or here. And the reason for that is, if you do put it here, you'll notice on this side, one's facing out, one's facing up, and you want professional, you want it to look consistent all the way. So all of the ones that are this way, that are on the gutter facing this way, are down, and all the ones that are on the roof line going this way are up. So that's why I never put one here. Just like the example with the gutters, there's two ways the clips can be connected to the lights. One way is when the actual clip part, this part, is hooked onto the clip, and then where the clip's facing the outside and it's not actually hooked onto the clip. One thing to note is, when you reuse these years over years, you may need to replace the clips that are shaped this way where it's not actually hooked onto the clip. Reason being, they lose their elasticity and they open up. and the cold makes them not want to go back to how they were, so they become really loose and the light and the socket won't fit. So if it's kind of falling out and it's not fitting, just replace that clip. So when attaching it to the roof, you can see there's a few different ways that I showed. So one way is you can go the whole shingle where you can slide it up underneath, and then the tooth part grabs onto the roof. That's one way. But sometimes when you go to lift this up, it won't actually lift up. It's stuck to here, so you can't slide anything in that crack. If that's the case, then you can lift up just a couple shingles and find an area where you can slide that in and get it in there. But I find it's easiest when it is able to lift up just to put them all like this, and it's very secure. But you might get to one where you can't do that, and it's okay to put it on 1 or 2 shingles like you see here. Alright, so like that picture, we're going to imagine this is the roof line and here's the peak. You always need a bulb on the peak. Now, if you realize when you're laying it out you made a mistake and it's not on there, you need to adjust it so that there's a bulb on the peak. Sometimes where that's plugged in, you don't have any more room, so you're going to have to take it from this side. So you're going to move this bulb here and make sure it's on the peak. Now, when you have 2 bulbs really close together, you don't have to be crazy trying to get it super symmetrical, but that doesn't look good either. So bring this bulb up a little bit maybe, and then make sure that this is at least half the length apart. And I would just move it just a little bit. You can move this one just a little bit and just make it look a little bit better. Don't put 2 bulbs right next to each other. Give them a little bit of space so that when you look at it, it looks clean and professional. But remember, on every single peak, there always has to be 1 bulb sticking straight up, every peak. Okay, and number 7 is you're going to make sure all the connections are connected. So when you hang up, this strand here, you're going to cut it, put on the female, then you're going to take your extension cord, plug it in, go to there, cut it, put on the female, and you're going to make sure everything's connected, and then you're going to plug in everything all at once and make sure all the lights are on. What you may find is that a whole strand is out. So since you checked it on the ground, you know all of the males are working. So it has to be a female connection, and then you're going to find, if the lights are on all the way to here, but then everything after this 3F connection is dead, it's the female connector right there that isn't working. That's one of the reasons you want to go in this order and check all the males on the ground, so when it's all connected, if something is out, it has to be the female connection at the point where things stop working. That's what's busted. That's going to save you time and make you super efficient. If a connection is broken, you know exactly where to find it and which one to fix. Okay, so now that everything is connected, the last thing you do, you plugged it in, unplug that, and you install a timer right here, and then you just clean up and you're ready to move on to the next job.